Okay, we're in. Back in the stream. Great. Okay, so I just wanted to start this one with a bit of news. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure as everyone has heard, Bethesda Softworks, BGS, announced that they're closing 4 studios. Now, this does include, they've announced it, if we look over, that's funny, their latest post. Wow, Bethesda has literally posted nothing about this. They've posted nothing about this. This news dropped last night, I believe, Australia time. So this, whatever the time is in America, I guess, to like now, like earlier in the day. But essentially they announced the closure of 4 studios, one being Tango Gameworks, 2 other ones that I cannot remember right now, but it's all very, really unfortunate. And the biggest one to me personally is the closing of Arkane Austin. And I think for most people that's going to be, aside from fans of Hi-Fi Rush or other Bethesda games that have been affected, Arkane Austin is probably the biggest news here. And look, I've been a massive Arkane fan since almost day one. I grew up on... I know that was technically not the Austin studio, but I grew up on Dishonored. I actually brought this to just show how much of a Dishonored nerd I am. I've still kept... and we can see if there's a date on this. I've still kept the original game magazine for when Dishonored was first announced. Back when... is there a date on this? Anyway, I've still got the magazine when the game was announced. This was before I actually got and played the game. I bought this magazine back when people would buy gaming magazines in real life. There it is. Look at that. The world exclusive review. Dishonored. Go behind the mask of the ultimate assassin in this year's greatest new game. December 2012. December 2012. Now, this was the magazine that made me get the game in the first place. I didn't know much about it, and honestly, this picture actually entirely misled me. I thought it was a very different game. I thought it was very much... don't get me wrong. What I'm about to say may sound a little strange. I thought it was more Victorian England. And yes, that sounds strange because Dishonored is a Victorian England themed kind of game. It's like if Victoria England was, powered by whale oil and whatnot. But I thought it was much more that, like less kind of a different world. I thought it was like actually kind of going to be England. I thought you were going to be more of it was going to be more of a Thief style thing, and it has its roots from Thief, that's for sure, but it's just something so much more. I think it actually, sorry to any diehard Thief fans, I think this game went above and beyond. And yesterday I was actually making my first full-length YouTube video about Dishonored, and specifically about the DLC from Dishonored, the Knife of Dunwall, the Rigma Witches, which are fantastic if you have not played them. But this being said, I am a massive, massive Arkane fan. Now that is more specifically Arkane Lyon, but I do also have a huge soft spot for Prey, which is an Arkane Austin game, and now it looks like, not that there was any plan for this that I'm aware of, but now there's probably no chance of a Prey 2. And that's something that I think a lot of people are actually going to be pretty heartbroken over. Prey was just a fantastic game. And look, it was very underwhelming in terms of reception. The reviews weren't great when it came out. There were issues. It's not a perfect game. Even today, it's not a perfect game, and it's hard to get into. I still tell people who try to play it, because this happened to me, you have to get through the first 5 hours of gameplay, which is a big investment. Like Steam, you have to, if you want a refund, play the first 2 hours of. Any more than 2 hours and you can't get a refund. So it's, if you want to actually invest in that game financially, you have to play beyond that 2 hour mark. You have to go more like to the 5-10 hour mark to actually really get into it. Because I bought Prey when it first came out because I'm a big fan of Arkane. And I played like the first 4 or 5 hours and I stopped. The concept is incredible. The whole like world shattering around you at the start, and then the game being almost like BioShock inspired, which is very much what they were riding on in terms of marketing. I feel like a lot of people really riding on that BioShock theme vibe. And when it wasn't BioShock and it wasn't really this trippy world breaky thing like it sets up at the very beginning, it kind of, once all that fades away, you're kind of left with just this awkward alien shooter dungeon crawler kind of vibe. Not that it's similar to dungeon crawlers really, but you do crawl through dungeons kind of. But once you actually, I gave it a year later, I think maybe a year and a half later, I went back and played it. I got through that first few hours, that first chunk, and then it really took off. It just takes off like a rocket and you get hooked. And it's hard to describe to people who aren't fans of Prey, but Prey fans will understand that there's just a point where it just absorbs you and you can't stop talking about it, and it's all you want to play. You know, you get really into the recycling and the manufacturing, the printing process. That whole system is just incredible. One of the best gaming systems I've found. It's such a great way of taking something like a Fallout sort of scrapping and building mechanic and turning it into something really physical, tangible. And it pairs kind of well with the sort of limited inventory space management you have, like something from a Resident Evil game, that kind of blocky, you've got to place your weapons in the right position in your inventory so you can hold everything you want. And that's really hard at the start. It's not, people who are fans of Resident Evil will understand that system, but people who are playing Prey aren't the kinds of people that normally would have played Resident Evil, to be honest, because that's who I am. I'm not a Resident Evil guy that much. I have tried, but I wasn't into them from the start, so I feel like it's hard to get into them without that nostalgia. So going into this as not really a fan of that system and not familiar with that system of inventory management, it's a hard game to pick up. But that aside, it's just a fantastic game, and I think people are really going to miss that chance of a second one, of a sequel. And I don't think we're going to see any more updates either, like that Moonshadow, I think it was Moonfall. I didn't actually play that because it was very different to the base game, and I just liked what the base game was. I wanted more of that. I didn't want a different game. People said it's amazing. That was really well received, but again, it was just different to what I kind of want out of Arkane games, so I didn't really gel with it. And then the next biggest game we had from Arkane, again, I believe this was Arkane Lyon, was Deathloop. Deathloop was Look, it's a beautiful game. It's genuinely a really, really pretty game. You know, especially that final shot. I won't spoil it, but if you play the game, that sort of last moment with, I mean, I believe this may be only the case with the more canon ending, but it's just stunning. It's a stunning, beautiful game. It looks great, and the gunplay feels amazing. Like, genuinely, they got, for a studio that doesn't have a lot of experience with guns, looking at you, Dishonored, because that the guns in that, not that I really use them at all, but the gunplay in Deathloop was actually genuinely great. It was really good. It was really fun. So when I first jumped into Deathloop, it's really fun and the mystery is great. You know, the kind of the world that they built is really cool. But once you get past that and you start like actually looking at the systems, the loading screens, all the tutorial pop-ups. I mean, that was one of the biggest things. It's like 40 minutes of just tutorial pop-ups. And then the actual just like entry-level tutorial missions take like over an hour of gameplay just for you to get to playing the real game. So it makes replaying it hard, because I've tried. I love replaying those games. I played Dishonored 4 times. I played Dishonored 2 at least 3 times. They're really replayable to me because you kind of just jump straight in. And yes, they're a lot more like linear, I guess, in terms of you are bound within a single mission each time, whereas in Deathloop you're not bound really to any box. But that first mission, where you're just kind of bound to this one linear path before you can really do anything, is really frustrating in a replay. And it would have been nicer to have the opportunity to just not do that, like, at all. That would have been really nice. Yeah, and Deathloop was not received very well. It did okay. I think the sales-wise, it was great. I think it was good sales-wise. But we haven't really heard anything since. Like, one of the big things, and I posted about this back when it came out on Reddit, there was a lot of, like, upset over the way it just kind of... The way it ends, I won't go too far into that, spoiler territory, and the way that it felt kind of left off, like, unexplained in many ways, and unsatisfying. Like, you go through all this, and then it's just like, okay, you're finished. Cool, done, and nothing else. And one thing I wrote about on the Deathloop Reddit was how there should be DLC to fix some of this stuff. To not fix, but like add to some of this stuff. And I mentioned how Arkane are not afraid of DLC. They love good, big DLC. I mean, the Knife of Dunmore and the Brigmore Witches from Dishonored are not only in new content, new storylines for the Dishonored series, but they are actually bigger and better than the base game. Bigger relatively. There's less missions, but you see kind of so much more of the world. And the story is more impressive in many ways. The gameplay is better. There's new mechanics. So it actually enhanced and added on and told more of that world. And then we saw the same with Dishonored 2 with the Death of the Outsider, which wasn't packaged as DLC, but it essentially did what the Knife of Dunwall did for Dishonored. It was published as its own kind of smaller game, but it could be seen as the DLC to Dishonored 2. And then with Prey, we had Moonfall, which again was really well received. A lot of people loved the way it brought a new spin on the game mechanics that were presented, and that brought in a lot of new fans. It brought back a lot of existing fans too. I, again, didn't play it. I wasn't that excited about it. I might play it one day. I don't know if that kind of ship sailed for me. But I wrote about how I expected there to be some kind of big, expansive Deathloop DLC. And we haven't really seen anything of that. We got like some big update that was, again, let's see if there's any news, because I have not heard a single thing. Yeah, again, 1 year ago, the top post is from a year ago, asking about it, and it's another year later, nothing, absolutely nothing. And yeah, it's an Arkane Lyon game. But the fact that they've all moved on to Blade, it means that there's going to be nothing. We're not going to hear anything about this. Like, they're already a small studio, like Arkane Studio size Lyon. $150 employees, and this is just generic Arkane Studios. Oh no, this is Arkane Austin. But 150, like, that's really not much. When you're talking about, like, AAA game studios, that's really not many. I mean, they're all going to be on... almost all of them have to be on. And that's not including... I mean, Arkane Austin was shut down. So when we're talking about just Lyon, I'm not sure what those numbers would be. I mean, this says 51 to 200 employees. That's a really vague number. But we can surmise that Arkane Lyon probably has between 100 and 200 employees, 155 employees. It's probably similar to Arkane Austin. But if half of that is including Arkane Austin, and then the other half is Arkane Lyon, then that's like 120, not 125, 75, 78 employees. I mean, that's tiny. For a AAA studio, that's really, really small. that's not much bigger than some indie studios, some larger indie studios. That's really, and Arkane does kind of operate like an indie studio in many ways, or it did. But the real fall, ironically, of Arkane Austin was Redfall. Hence the irony. Redfall was a abysmal game. Like really disappointing, and I didn't even touch it. I saw when I saw the trailer, again, massive Arkane fan. I have always supported anything that they've done. When I saw the trailer drop for this, I pretty much instantly lost interest. I was like, okay, they have, like when Deathloop came out, I was like, okay, they're doing something different. They're moving on. They're putting their name out there as not just the Dishonored Prey guys. They're saying, we aren't just Dishonored. We can do more. We can do different things. We can do different ideas. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, there is some online stuff. There is a bit of the arcadiness of what we're seeing in a lot of other studios coming out. But they hadn't gone fully into that. They hadn't fully gone into the online thing. The online thing was optional. You didn't have to play with it. Most of the time I played without it set on. So you could kind of ignore that aspect, ignore the arcadiness. But then Redfall came out. I saw the trailer and I instantly knew, I knew that this was going to be something different. Very different to Dishonored, very different to Prey, even very different to Deathloop. It was essentially just, I mean, look at it. It's like, as soon as I saw the picture of 4 characters, I knew what they were going for. I mean, this is the time when those kind of 4-player online cooperative shooters were just like at their highest. That's when this was sort of announced. And it just went fully ham into the whole online thing. Microtransactions, terrible servers, glitches, you and your buddies kind of thing. And look, I get there's a real big like fan base for those sort of games. Huge, like probably the biggest fan base of those sort of games outside of like mobile games, I guess. They have like the biggest support in the gaming world. But I've never been into those games. I'm not really big on the sort of online cooperative shooters. I'm much more into like story games, especially single player experiences. I'm not averse to online stuff, but so that was again reason why I wasn't interested. But then when it came out, and even the online gaming fans, the cooperative fans, weren't interested and had massive problems with it, and then it was review bombed and all that stuff, and rightfully so. It just entirely flopped, and now the studio is shut down as a result. And I believe it's a direct result of this game. What's the most heartbreaking element of it all is the fact that it's the developers that are punished. Because I guarantee they are not the ones who wanted this game. The story of Arkane is quite a sad one. They were a really small studio. They started in 1999. I think it was a game, Arx Fatalis. That's it. Yeah, Arx Fatalis was, it's not something I played, but it was their kind of founding game. They were a small little studio, and then they got Dishonored, and Dishonored just took off like a rocket. And then they just kind of went on from there, and they were owned by Bethesda. Sure. But Bethesda wasn't that, like, not a mammoth studio at that time either. Like, it was big in the gaming world for sure, definitely. But they were still, like, really focused on cool, unique products. They weren't like, Call of Duty. They weren't like I don't know, like a Nintendo or a Ubisoft at that time. Bethesda was still kind of seen as more of a smaller AAA developer in that world of AAA game development. For the developers have always been, especially the original Lyon studio, really about creative worlds, immersive experiences, and just like cool ideas, really cool, unique ideas. And Dishonored and Prey are just perfect examples of that. They take really cool spins on existing genres. But then they were bought by Microsoft. And yes, Redfall had to have been developed for a while, but there are rumors that it was changed a lot throughout its development, and there was no real consistent theme over what they were making. There was a lot of confusion over what they were making. A lot of the developers felt like they had no idea what kind of game they were making. They were told very different things. So there was so much inconsistency. The developers had really no idea what they were in for, and it was something entirely new for them. They haven't really done this whole online thing before. They dabbled in Deathloop, and again, that was Lyon, not Austin. So look, I'm not saying they had no experience, and I'm not saying that's an excuse for why Redfall was so bad, but the fact that Microsoft can just come in, shut down a big existing studio, well, big relatively, but in terms of impact, an important studio, just because they failed to fulfill Redfall. And Prey wasn't received that well anyway, so they were probably hoping Redfall would be, they were probably already on rocky ground anyway, like, okay, Austin, what have you done? Arkane Austin, what have you done? You gave us Prey, it was okay. We got Moonfall, that was good. You know, you've done some good stuff, but we need something that's really going to prove your worth. Here, have a entirely new genre of game that you've never touched before. Give it your arcane spin. It'll be huge. Oh, look, it's gone terribly. Bye devs. 70% of the staff laid off. So it's really disappointing. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that, how heartbreaking it is, and I really hope the veterans there, or any of the developers there, move on in the way that LucasArts Studios did. When LucasArts shut down, Lucas Game Studios shut down, a lot of them went on to make Broken Age, which is a fantastic game if you haven't played it. It's really good. What is that? Yeah, Tim Schafer. Double Fine. A lot of these are LucasArts veterans. They went on and made Double Fine, which Psychonauts, Brutal Legend, Broken Age, these are fantastic games. They also did Weird West, I believe. Where is it? They've done tons of games. Grim Fandango Remastered, because they worked on the original Grim Fandango and Full Throttle and Day of the Tentacle. These are fantastic games. I mean, Grim Fandango is one of my favorite games of all time. I'd love to play it on stream one day. So a fallen studio, Lucas Games, it crumbles apart, and we get this amazing studio that's gone on to do amazing things. And I really hope we see that with Arkane Austin. Now, they can't take the Arkane name at all. They can't take any of the IPs. They can't do that. But they do have the Arkane experience. And I believe they could make amazing things. I mean, look at Prey. They could do something in that kind of setting, obviously with a new IP, but bring back some of those mechanics, bring back some of those vibes that it gave you. Because it's such a unique game that very few games give you that vibe. And just stay clear of anything like Redfall. I really hope, or at least move to other studios that are doing cooler things. So I hope it's an opportunity. In a way, it might be a blessing for some of those developers to move away from a studio that's kind of been sold out by corporate greed, to move on to better opportunities. They might be able to get better jobs somewhere else at a smaller place that's not sold out yet. And I really hope this is kind of the end of this whole sort of gaming industry layoff period. I hope this is sort of the end of the big emphasis on every single game moving to online, paid service, whatever you call it. Again, I'm not an online gamer, so I don't really know, but I just hope this is moving away. This is a sign that they're moving away from that as an industry, and I hope this is the last place to be impacted. I feel like it won't be, but I hope it is the last that's impacted. So, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. It's a bit sad. It's quite sad. The weirdest thing is that Bethesda hasn't posted anything about it. They've not, look, May 1st, happy 2022, happy 22 years of Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Cool, okay. Fallout 76 updates, great. Fallout 76. Oh, Fallout Shelter. Okay. May the 4th be with you. Cool. Good stuff. Oh, nothing since then. Very quiet. Very quiet indeed. Yeah. So, and if you just look at Bethesda's YouTube page, it kind of says where their head's at. I mean, this is a game. This is a game studio that brought us Fallout. Well, Fallout 3. Fallout 4, which is, it wasn't great, but it's kind of okay in its own way. But this was a good studio. Like, this was the studio back in the day. The studio for story games, for RPGs, for brilliant experiences. And now look at what they're posting. Elder Scrolls Online, Starfield, Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76. You have some Hi-Fi Rush things here, but it's Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls Online. It's like, there's a handful of their other projects here and there, but everything is Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls Online. There you go. Oh, the irony. Oh, the irony of seeing that. But it's all just, everything is focused on their online content. Everything's moved that way. It's where and I'm sure they're making bank off this. Like, apparently there's a lot of people that play Elder Scrolls Online. There's a lot of people that love it. And I'm sure it's making so much money for them. And I'm sure that's where they're coming from. They probably don't realize that. I mean, the people highest up, I'm sure a lot of the developers on the ground know what's wrong with this. But I think a lot of the higher up, the executives, don't realize what people actually want. They just look at money as the idea of what people want. Oh, people are spending money, so it must be what they want. People didn't buy Prey, so it mustn't be what they want. But at the end of the day, when you start just following where it makes the most money, you lose goodwill. You lose all the goodwill of your fans. And I think people have been hurt over and over again by Bethesda. And this is the result. This is the result we have. So, yeah, disappointing. Anyway,